Now to that disturbing story that has everyone talking, the kidnapping ordeal of Jaycee Lee Dugard that lasted for 18 long years. This morning, as the investigation unfolds, we're getting our first look inside the maze of secret tents and sheds where Dugard and her two children were kept. NBC's George Lewis is live with the latest. George, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Carl. Later this morning, police and FBI agents will resume their search at the home of Phillip Garrido and his wife and the property next door. They're literally trying to unearth evidence.
Over the weekend, more than 20 officers from 2 local police departments and the sheriff's office, aided by the FBI, brought shovels, metal detectors, and dogs trained to search for human bodies. The question, can Phillip Garrido, the man accused of imprisoning Jaycee Dugard starting at age 11, be tied to a series of unsolved murders involving female victims, whose bodies were dumped in an industrial area near where Garido once worked?
We're just trying to see if there's any link, any possible link between Phillip Garrido and those open cases, but at this point it's just too early to say.
Garrido and his wife have pleaded not guilty to more than 24 criminal counts in the Dugard case. He was previously sentenced to life in 1977 in another kidnap and rape case, but let out on parole 11 years later. Dan D. Moranville was a detective on the Reno, Nevada Police Department when Garido was arrested.
If he was going to be let out, at least he should have been neutered, the very least.
These photos show the strange compound of sheds and tents where police say Garido kept Jaycee Dugard and the 2 daughters he fathered with her. Former customers of Garido's printing business who met Jaycee were astounded when they heard she was the kidnapped girl on the news.
I was like, oh my God, that's the girl I met. That's the girl I've talked to. That's the girl I've on the phone. It was really a shock for me.
It was a pair of alert campus cops at the University of California, Berkely, who noticed Garido and his daughters behaving strangely as they came to hand out religious literature.
I ran the name check. He comes back on parole, federal parole for rape and kidnapping. These are 2 young girls with a registered sex offender convicted for rape. Mommy mode, protective mode kicks in.
Now the question, will there be more revelations about what may have happened at this house?
Now, some of the murder victims were women involved in prostitution. This morning, the father of Phillip Garrido spoke about his son to the New York Post, saying he was a sex addict. That was his problem. I believe he killed those prostitutes. No evidence of that so far. Carl?
George Lewis, thanks for that. Pat Brown is a criminal profiler. Pat, good morning to you. If authorities are correct, Garido held Dugard for 18 years. Police were at his house. Neighbors obviously had concerns about him. How is it possible that he went undetected for so long?
Well, Carl, I think we're all kind of shocked about that and appalled, quite frankly, that a sex offender can, first of all, be released from prison. He got a 50-year sentence for kidnapping a stranger, holding her in his storage unit and torturing her, and he got the 50 years, which he should have gotten, but some idiot parole board, and I'll have to say that, absolutely, let this guy out after 10, so he could be rehabilitated, which is impossible, and put him back out on the streets, and then he was just not monitored carefully enough, and nobody apparently went into his home to see what was going on, checked his property. Outrageous. And the neighbors, they did see something, and some did report. But what happens sometimes is if you report it and you don't get any response after that, you see nothing has changed, you're not going to report it twice. You're not going to call back and say, I'm still concerned, because you figure out there must be nothing going on and just being one of those nosy neighbors.
By now we know the sequence of events that led to his arrest and the confession, bringing those 2 girls, whom we presume are his daughters, to the University of California Berkely campus. Is it unusual to want to bring girls like that out into the open? Was he looking to get caught?
Oh, no, absolutely not. He's just gotten to the point where he has such grandiose thinking. After all, he's gotten away with this for 18 years. And you have to remember, his mind says, every day that I get up and the police haven't knocked on my door, what fools. They absolutely have no clue what I'm doing. None of the neighbors know what I'm doing. 18 years of getting away with this. He doesn't think he can be touched, and he thinks he can do whatever he wants to.
Now we have the police searching his property for clues as to these murders of other women in the 1990s, many of them prostitutes. How likely is it that if he is in fact guilty of the crimes he's been accused of, that he's also guilty of crimes, sex crimes, even murder in those other cases?
Oh, I wouldn't put it past him. I mean, what would murder mean to him? He's a psychopath of the nth degree. Whether he rapes them or he kills them, he does what's necessary. I would say definitely take a look at him, although that doesn't mean there couldn't be another sex predator right in the area, because we know if you look at that kind of thing, we'll find 150 in the area. So it may be him, it may not be him. And I want to comment on something his father said, that he's a sex addict. No such thing. You cannot be addicted to sex. You simply like having the power and control over people when you have sex, and that's it. You're not addicted to it.
I want to ask you about Jaycee Lee Dugard herself. Her stepfather has said that she feels guilty because she shares a bond with Garido. Is that what we normally call Stockholm Syndrome, where victims find a bond with the perpetrators? And what is the process of rehabilitating her? She's missed so much in life. How likely is it that she can regain some sense of normality?
Well, Carl, yeah, I think the Stockholm Syndrome thing, yes, if you're stuck with somebody and they have total power and control over you for year after year after year, you have a tendency to look to them as a person who's very important to you, because they're the only person you know. We see a lot of women in very abusive situations who, even if they can leave those abusive situations, still think of, that's my husband, that's the person, that's my partner, that's who I'm with. So this little girl, well, she's not a little girl anymore now, she's a grown woman. Both she and her daughters need to get a really great therapist who lets them know what they're feeling is normal, if they have any kind of guilt feelings, to help them get over those, and to realize that the past was horrible, but there's been people in concentration camps and other horrible situations, and to learn how to put that in the past and reach out to the future, because they all deserve a future.
Pat Brown, thanks very much.
Thanks, Carl.